You ever feel like you're just drowning in information trying to keep up?
Well, absolutely. It's a constant struggle.
We get it. So that's why we're here today doing a deep dive into something pretty interesting in the B2B tech space.
Yeah. What's that?
It's Vertaware's Platform Shift podcast initiative.
Ah, Vertaware. Okay. And what makes this one stand out? Is it just another company podcast?
Well, that's what we're digging into. But their focus seems quite specific. They talk about intelligent operational platforms.
Right. And not for the usual suspects, maybe.
Exactly. They're targeting industries like insurance, legal, healthcare, even local services.
Yeah.
Places maybe not famous for being bleeding edge tech adopters.
Interesting. Those are definitely sectors we all interact with, though. So understanding what's changing there behind the curtain, that could be useful.
That's the idea. So our mission today is to unpack Vertaware's strategy with this podcast. What are they really trying to do?
Okay.
What's, genuinely different or interesting here? And maybe what are the potential bumps in the road for them?
And how are we getting this info?
We're actually looking at Vertaware's own materials, their analysis about this platform shift thing.
Gotcha. So straight from the source, essentially. What's the core theme they're pushing?
They call it a quiet revolution.
A quiet revolution. Okay. Tell me more.
Forget the flashy headlines and the big startup noise. Vertaware seems focused on transforming back office operations.
Yeah.
The fundamental stuff.
So think AI, automation, UX design, maybe, but applied to the everyday tasks.
Yeah, exactly. We're talking about tackling those, endless intake forms, wrestling PDFs into something useful, ditching the manual spreadsheets.
Ah, the unglamorous work, the stuff that actually makes businesses run or not run smoothly.
Right, those practical fixes.
And for our listeners, why should they care about this specific company's podcast strategy?
Well, we think it's kind of a shortcut, a way to understand some pretty significant shifts happening in these essential industries. You might connect the dots to your own experiences, dealing with insurance or healthcare. Maybe have a few aha moments about how things could work better.
Right, seeing the bigger picture through this specific example. Okay, I'm intrigued. Let's dig into this quiet revolution idea more. What do they really mean?
Okay, so the core concept, as they put it, is moving from paper-heavy chaos, I like that phrase,
Relatable.
to intelligent, scalable platforms. They're zeroing in on those foundational, often invisible back office functions.
So deliberately not the splashy front-end website redesign or the latest customer-facing chatbot.
Exactly. They seem to be contrasting their approach with that. They're arguing that the real, deep impact comes from fixing the engine room, not just painting the ship.
The internal plumbing, basically. Fixing the core workflows that everything else relies on.
That's the idea. They're positioning these quiet platforms, as they call them, as the real disruptors.
Which is an interesting take, isn't it? Because usually disruption is associated with something loud and obvious.
Right. Their argument seems to be that real sustainable change comes from fundamentally re-engineering how work gets done internally.
And maybe the timing is right for that message. Perhaps after years of focus on the customer experience, the back office inefficiencies are really starting to bite.
That makes a lot of sense, especially, like you said, in those industries they target.
Yeah.
Insurance, legal, healthcare.
Yeah, they're not exactly known for jumping on every tech bandwagon. They've got complex regulations, deeply embedded ways of doing things.
So big radical changes might seem scary or just impractical.
Exactly. So this idea of a quiet revolution, maybe suggesting more measured, step-by-step, but fundamental improvements, that could sound much more appealing. Less risky, perhaps.
Yeah.
More focused on stability and compliance.
And this whole narrative, this quiet revolution thing, it seems tied pretty closely to Vertaware's core company principles, doesn't it?
Oh, absolutely. You look at their stated principles, things like build for the operator, automate the boring, not the human. Simplicity is a feature.
And obviously, quiet platforms are the real disruptors.
Right. It all reinforces that central message. So the podcast isn't just, random commentary. It's a direct channel for their philosophy, how they see the world.
Okay, so we've got the narrative down. The quiet revolution. Now, who exactly are they trying to reach with this? Who's the audience?
They're pretty specific. Insurance, legal, healthcare, and local services are the industries.
Right.
And they explicitly say these aren't the typical early adopters. They see them as established industries that are now, quote, ripe for a platform shift.
Ripe because the old ways are finally causing too much pain.
That seems to be the implication, yeah. The limits of the current systems are becoming really obvious.
And within those industries, are they aiming high, like at CEOs? Or
Honestly, it seems much more ground level, actually. They talk about targeting personas like the operator buried in admin work,
okay,
or the legal assistant managing trust intake manually, even the founder trying to streamline onboarding without a CTO.
so the people actually doing the frustrating work.
Yeah, exactly. As they put it, the people who actually run businesses and the builders who want to help them.
That feels smart. Talking directly to the people feeling the pain points daily.
Yeah, those are the folks most likely to go, yes, someone finally gets it. And targeting the builders, too. That's clearly about attracting talent, right?
Yeah.
People who want to solve these specific kinds of problems.
Makes total sense. Focusing on specific industries lets them be specialists. And talking to operators builds that immediate connection. Plus the talent angle.
Precisely. It shows empathy, practical understanding, builds trust, potentially, and creates a community around this type of innovation.
So what does an episode actually sound like? What's the content structure?
They seem to have a pretty clear three-part framework for each one.
Okay.
First is clarity. So really defining and diagnosing the problem on the ground, what's actually broken.
Getting specific. I like that.
Second is reframing. That's about reimagining those workflows, using tools like AI, better UX design, that sort of thing.
So the how it could be better part.
Exactly. And the third pillar is inspiration, showing the potential benefits, the positive outcomes of making those changes. What does the after look like?
Problem, rethinking it, and the vision.
Yeah.
Sounds practical. Do they give examples? Like episode titles?
Yeah, they do. Titles like forms are just interfaces for broken workflows. That immediately reframes something common, right?
Yeah. Makes you think differently about forms.
Or another one, why 70% automation before day one isn't crazy. That's a pretty bold claim.
70% before day one. Wow. Okay, that definitely grabs your attention. What's the significance of that kind of claim?
Well, it's a powerful hook, isn't it? It strongly suggests they understand the need for quick, tangible results.
Right, not some massive project that takes years to show value.
Exactly. For those founders or operations leads, especially if they're hesitant about big investments, that promise of significant automation right away, that could be very appealing. It speaks directly to ROI concerns.
And how long are these episodes? Are we talking hour-long deep dives each time?
No, they're keeping it short. Weekly episodes planned for just 10 to 15 minutes each.
Okay, bite-sized. That makes sense for busy people.
Yeah, respecting the audience's time. Those operators and founders probably don't have hours to spare. Short, focused content fits into the gaps.
So they make the podcast. How do they make sure people actually find it? What's the promotion plan?
It looks like a multi-channel approach. They plan to repurpose each episode into a blog post good for SEO.
Smart.
They're also hitting LinkedIn pretty hard, apparently, using teasers, carousel posts, trying to engage people in those target industries directly on that platform.
Where those professionals likely hang out. Makes sense.
And interestingly, they're also planning short video clips using synthetic voice technology.
Synthetic voice. Like an AI voice reading the script.
Seems like it. Plus monthly email roundups for subscribers.
The synthetic voice part is interesting. Efficient, maybe, but any thoughts on potential downsides there? Especially for building trust.
That's a really good point to raise. I mean, yes, efficiency is probably the driver. But does it sound authentic?
Right. If you're trying to connect on a practical, we understand your pain level.
Does a synthetic voice achieve that? It could potentially sound impersonal, maybe even, I don't know, slightly off-putting to some. It might detract from the credibility they're trying to build.
Yeah, it feels like a trade-off.
Yeah.
Efficiency versus that human connection. Something they'll need to watch, I guess.
Definitely a key consideration for them.
Okay, let's zoom out a bit. What are Vertaware's bigger strategic objectives here? Why are they doing this podcast in the first place?
They seem to have a few key goals. First, establishing authority, becoming recognized as thought leaders in these specific niches.
Makes sense. Content marketing 101.
Right. Second, it's about attracting leads, both potential clients, those founders and ops leads we talked about,
And talent.
and in talent, yeah, the builders. And third, it's a way to consistently hammer home their core principles and messages. Keep reinforcing their brand viewpoint.
So how does the actual content, the focus on those operational details, help build that authority?
By getting really specific about the pain points, mentioning things like faxing a Medicaid form or needing 3 screens open to run a quote.
Yeah, that shows you actually know the industry, right?
Right.
Not just talking generalities.
Exactly. It demonstrates real domain expertise, a practical understanding of the day-to-day grind. And by positioning it as insights without hype, they're trying to build that reputation for being a grounded, trustworthy source.
And how does that specific content attract, say, a potential customer versus a potential employee?
For customers, it's simple. The podcast is talking directly about their problems, the things keeping them up at night. It positions Vertaware as having potential solutions.
Okay.
For potential employees, the builders highlighting principles like automate the boring, not the human, and focusing on solving real problems. That paints a picture of meaningful work. It's not just another coding job, it's about fixing fundamental issues. That can be a big draw for talent.
And the multi-channel thing we discussed, blog posts, LinkedIn, that helps amplify those principles too.
For sure, taking that core podcast message and spreading it across different formats ensures consistency. Repetition is key for branding. It helps drill home their unique perspective and what they stand for, again and again.
Okay, now, we need to talk about the elephant in the room,
Yeah, huh?
or maybe the vertifor in the room, that name similarity. Vertaware versus Vertavore. How big a deal is that?
Yeah, that's a really significant point. Vertaware is a major player, especially in InsurTech. Decades of history, huge market share, serves thousands of agencies and carriers.
So not exactly a small competitor to be confused with.
Not at all. The potential for brand confusion is, I'd say, substantial. They offer a wide range of insurance software solutions themselves.
Wow. So Vertaware is stepping onto a stage where a giant with a very similar name already has the spotlight,
Yeah.
especially in insurance. That sounds challenging.
It definitely is. There's a real risk that potential clients, partners, maybe even job applicants could mix them up.
Which could dilute Vertaware's marketing, make it harder to carve out their own identity.
Absolutely. They could get lost in the noise or just be seen as that other Vertaware-sounding company.
Is there enough difference in what they actually do or who they target to help clear things up?
Well, there's definitely overlap. Vertaware mentions products like InsureGenie and DocuGenie for insurance quoting and documents. That sounds like it treads near Vertaware territory.
Right.
But Vertaware also talks about focusing on legal and healthcare more broadly. And then there's this HealGenie, described as a homeopathy AI chat.
Homeopathy AI, that sounds quite different from traditional insurance software.
It does. So that wider industry focus plus something like HealGenie might help differentiate them from Vertaware's core insurance focus. But it's not immediately obvious how HealGenie fits the B2B operational platform narrative.
So it sounds like they really need to lean into what makes them different. Could that quiet revolution narrative be their key differentiator against, say, Vertavore?
It certainly could be part of it, yeah. By emphasizing simplicity, the operator's viewpoint, practical automation, they might be trying to position themselves as, I don't know, more agile or user-focused compared to a legacy giant?
Maybe implicitly contrasting themselves.
Perhaps.
Yeah.
But they'll need to be very clear and consistent in communicating that difference. And again, the HealGenie mentioned, it adds a layer of difference, but also maybe a layer of, how does that fit? Needs clarification.
It's shifting focus slightly. Looking beyond Vertavore, how well do Vertaware's themes, the AI, the automation, the workflows, align with broader industry trends we expect for, say, 2025?
Actually, the alignment seems pretty strong there.
Yeah.
If you look at forecasts for their target sectors, insurance, legal, healthcare, you see common threads everywhere. Accelerated AI and automation adoption is huge.
Right.
Streamlining workflows is a top priority. Modernizing old data systems is critical. There's also increasing scrutiny on AI ethics and regulations. And crucially, a huge demand for practical value, real ROI.
And Vertaware's podcast topics seem to hit a lot of those.
Directly, yeah. AI in the back office, check. Fixing broken workflows, check. Focusing on operator pain points aligns with user centricity. The 70% automation claim speaks to ROI and speed. Transforming paper-heavy chaos hits digitization.
So they're tapping into conversations that are already happening, needs that are already felt.
Exactly. They seem to be entering the discussion right when their target audience is actively looking for answers and solutions in these areas. The timing seems good in that sense.
But as we know, everyone is talking about AI and digital transformation now. It's incredibly noisy out there. What makes Vertaware think their podcast can cut through?
That's the key question, isn't it? I think their potential differentiators are that niche focus on the operational plumbing, the stuff others might overlook,
Yeah.
that quiet platform philosophy emphasizing practicality over just hype, the specificity of their target audience, and that content structure starting with the operator's actual problem.
So less about the abstract potential of AI and more about how does this fix this specific frustrating process for this specific person in insurance or legal.
That seems to be the angle. If they can consistently deliver on that promise, genuinely insightful, practical content that solves real, specific problems, that's their potential edge. That's how they might stand out. But the execution has to be spot on.
Okay, so pulling this all together from our deep dive,
Yeah.
what would you say are the main strengths you see in this platform shift initiative?
Well, the alignment with market trends is definitely a strength. They seem to be talking about the right things at the right time.
Yeah.
The strategic intent seems clear. Thought leadership leads talent.
Mhm.
The targeting is specific, which is good. That quiet platform narrative has potential to be different. And the content framework seems logical and practical.
That sounds like a decent starting point.
Yeah.
What about the other side, the potential weaknesses, challenges, risks?
Well, the Vertaware name confusion is number one, I think. That's a big potential hurdle.
Right.
Then there's execution risk. Can they consistently produce high-quality, insightful content every week? Cutting through the noise, like we said, is a challenge. The synthetic voice choice carries risks for authenticity.
And measuring success.
Yeah, measuring real impact beyond just downloads is always tricky for content marketing. And again, that question mark around Heal Genie and how strategically aligned it is with the core B2B message for regulated industries.
So if you were giving Vertaware some friendly advice based on this analysis, what would be your key recommendations?
Okay, top things. First, tackle that Vertaware name confusion head on. Be crystal clear about who they are and what makes them different in all their messaging.
Don't shy away from it.
Exactly. Second, make sure the content is genuinely insightful. Go deep. Maybe use real case studies, get specific about results. Don't just stay surface level.
Elevate the content beyond the basics.
Right. Third, really nail the promotion strategy. They know who they're targeting. They need to find the most effective ways to reach those specific people.
Targeted promotion.
Fourth, I'd seriously reconsider the synthetic voice, or at least test its impact. Human voices often build more trust, especially for this kind of message.
Good point.
Fifth, define clear metrics. How will they know if this podcast is actually helping achieve those business goals? Leads, talent, authority. Go beyond vanity metrics.
Measure what matters.
And finally, clarify that strategic narrative. Make sure everything, including products like Heal Genie, clearly fits into the overall story they're telling about transforming operations in these core industries. Ensure it all makes sense together.
That's a solid list. Okay, so for everyone listening, wrapping this up, what's the main takeaway from our deep dive into Vertaware's platform shift?
I think the core thing is that Vertaware is trying to offer really practical, down-to-earth insights, focusing on how tech can solve specific, real operational problems in industries like insurance, legal, healthcare.
It's about that foundational stuff, right? The less glamorous work that actually makes things run better.
Exactly, the quiet changes that can have a big impact.
Which really makes you think, doesn't it? When you consider those industries, insurance, legal, healthcare, local services, what are some of those quiet revolutions in their everyday operations that maybe we don't see, but that could make the biggest difference?
That's a great question.
And how can focusing on those often overlooked areas, the internal plumbing, actually lead to some really surprising advancements down the line, something to mull over, maybe, in relation to your own work or experiences?
Absolutely. That focus on the fundamentals, it often holds more power than we realize.
Definitely food for thought. Thanks for diving deep of us today.
My pleasure.
We'll catch you next time.